Hey, good morning. And I'm not sure if you guys are as into like documentaries as maybe I am, but I love a good documentary. I literally I can't really get enough of them. Like I love to watch and learn and take information in that way, like very kinetically, like watching something, hearing something, kind of experience the whole the whole experience of what is going down. And I definitely have some of my favorite documentaries. I'd love to know right now in the chat what some of your favorite documentaries are. Like, I'd love to know if, tell us what maybe a topic, or maybe even tell us like a great documentary that you really love and love kind of all the information that's in it and everything that kind of goes into it. So I'd love to know like your favorite ones. I really thought about it, and I don't think that I have a favorite one. I think that I love most documentaries. Like it doesn't even. I even watched one like I'm horrible at video games. I watched one about video games. Like I watched them about all kinds of topics and man, if it's especially if it's a documentary and it's free, like I love to watch that stuff. Um, but I heard about this documentary that was about World War I, and it came out several years ago. And the first several minutes of it is just black and white, and it's like a small box in the TV screen. It's just like the way that it is shot is just small, black and white with just a little bit of sound. And it literally like the first 25 or 30 minutes of this thing is that quiet, and then after and that black and white, and so there's no color, there's it's hard to really see what's going on as much. And then about 30 minutes into it, what it begins to do is it expands out, and then it expands out to where not only is it like right here, but then all of a sudden it's like the full screen, then and it comes into color, and all of a sudden instead of just a few sounds, it's full sound. And you go from just seeing a tiny little bit of what is happening to now you are seeing the full story. Like you're seeing all of it. Like it's not just a little picture, you're seeing the big picture of what is happening and what is going on. And today, as it is March 28th of 2021, Palm Sunday, as we are looking at the collective of what we are going to be doing for Easter and how we're kind of doing Easter in the weeks that come up, I wanted to look today at what was happening, but maybe a little bit different. Like maybe not a traditional view of it. It is going to end with like coming Jesus coming into the city, but I want to start and look at all of Luke 19 kind of broadly and kind of look at what we can learn from that, because it tends to look to me like most of Luke 19 is kind of like the situation where people are not getting the big perspective. They are not seeing the big picture of what is truly happening. And so it starts actually in Luke 19. It starts with the story of Zacchaeus. Now, this story to me is very interesting because Jesus is actually on his way into Jerusalem. He is getting ready for the crucifixion. He is getting ready for the week that is leading to his death. And he is walking that way, and he comes across Zacchaeus. And what I think is really interesting about this is, Zacchaeus had a lot of challenges. People pretty much hated him. He was not very tall in stature, and so he had to get up into the tree. Jesus comes along, knows him by name somehow. It doesn't say that Jesus and Zacchaeus had a history or knew each other, but he comes across, calls him Zacchaeus, and he's like, come on down, I'm going to come hang with you. And so he goes to his home, hangs out with him, and then through that connection, through that interaction with Jesus, through that experience with Jesus, Zacchaeus, his life was completely altered. Like he was like very in a special way connected to Jesus. He believed that Jesus was who he said he was, and even says at the end, it says, and Jesus said to him at the very end, after Zacchaeus, his life had been changed and realized that he had defrauded people and he had not been connected the way that he needed to be connected. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, since he also is the son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Now, the people that saw him go with Zacchaeus, that there was no way that they really understood the full story. They were like, why is he going with this dude? Like, this dude is a jerk. This dude is like robbed me of taxes and robbed me of different things like that. And so you got to understand, and even the disciples are probably wondering, like, why are you taking time out of your day, walking where you're walking, dealing with this situation, knowing that he was going to go die on the cross, like this point in history that changed everything, like literally like changed eternity for many people, but also just changed history in what he was about to do. He took time for Zacchaeus, the person that most would not want to be around and that most would just walk right past. Jesus walked up to, and he proactively went and said, I want to go hang out with you. And then salvation came to his house. Zacchaeus' life was changed. And Jesus declares, hey, listen, I have come to do this, to seek and to save that which was lost. And, it's funny about that word lost, that when we think about that word, it's kind of come to be like, are you saved or are you lost? But it's like the actual word is like it's in the wrong place. And so it's like Zacchaeus had lived his life in the wrong place, and he was not seeing the big picture. Those around him were not seeing the big picture. And he was able to then basically bring salvation to his house, because not only did he want to see Jesus, not only did he want to connect with Jesus, he had probably heard what was going on. Jesus wanted to connect to him. Jesus said, come down, let's go and hang, and salvation came. And you got to be wondering like what people were thinking on the way. Like they're following him. Like there was probably a crowd with him. There was a pilgrimage that was coming into the city as they were coming in for this week. Those that were coming from outside of Jerusalem into it. And so it's kind of a very interesting way that this story, like leading up to Jesus' crucifixion and him dying on the cross, to me it's a very interesting story. And then Jesus then in verse 11 says this, the scripture says, as they heard these things, he proceeded to tell a parable. So he's just got done hanging out with Zacchaeus, and now he's like, hey, let me just tell you guys a story. It's going to be a story that means something. You may not get it really now, but he proceeded to tell this story, a parable, because he was getting close to Jerusalem. So he's like, listen, we're about to go in. You have to know that because Jesus was 100% God and 100% man, he knew what he was walking into. And it says he was near to Jerusalem, and because they supposed that the kingdom of God was to appear immediately, he said, therefore. So he begins to tell this story, because the people that followed him at this point had heard about the coming Messiah, and they were getting pumped up and excited and thought he was going to institute like this kingdom immediately, like it was just going to snap. And here we go. Jesus gets into Jerusalem, and it is game on. They wanted a warrior. They wanted him on a white horse. They wanted someone coming in and just taking names. And just wrecking shop. And so he begins to tell this story, the parable of the 10 minas, and it's different than the parable of the talents, where, he gives 10 talents and 5 talents and different things like that, and they did different things with it, and they were rewarded with that. This is actually the story of 10 servants, and he gave each one in this parable, the person that was going to be king, that was going to take over the kingdom, gave each servant one mina, which is basically the equivalent of 3 months' wages. So basically, if you think about your 3 months' wages, whatever it is. Some of you make a lot in 3 months. Some of you may make in the middle. Some of you may not make a whole bunch. But think about an average of 3 months' wage. And so he's saying this in Luke 19, verses 12. And again, trying to look at the fact that not everyone is seeing the big picture. And he says this, he's talking to people, and he says, a nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and then return. Calling 10 of his servants, he gave them 10 minas and said to them, engage in business until I come. So he's like, listen, it's not quite ready for me to take the kingdom and to do what I need to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each of you 10. I'm going to give you each a mina, 3 months' wages. And then he says this, engage in business until I come. But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him saying, why do we do not want this man to reign over us? So in this parable is like, listen, there's this faction of people that do not want this guy to take over the kingdom. And it says, when he returned, having received the kingdom, he ordered these servants to whom he had given the money to be called to him, that they might know what they had gained by doing business. So someone's coming along. They know that this nobleman is going to be taking over this kingdom, but he's like, it's not yet. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's 3 months' wages to each of these 10 servants, knowing that not everybody wants him to do this, that there was this delegation that was against him. Basically what he does is he comes back and says, let's see what they've done with what I've given them. And then the first one comes and said, look, hey, Lord, your mina has made 10 minas more. Okay. And so he's like, like I did so good with what you gave me. The other one was like, hey, I gave 5 mina. And then the guy, another one of the servants, comes up and says, Lord, here's your mina. So instead of handing 10, instead of handing 5, he hands him back exactly what he had given him, when the first instruction that he gave them is engage in business until I come, or do what you were supposed to do until I come back. And the guy said to him, the guy that had the 1 mina, that brought the 1 mina back, he basically was like, listen, I kept this in my handkerchief. Like, I didn't do anything with it. Like, you're a severe guy. Like, I don't want to do anything that could potentially mess this all up. So all I did is take what you gave me, and I'm giving it right back to you. And Jesus is not happy with this. Like, Jesus is not happy. And, you've got the guy that had the 1 turned to 10. You got the other guy that had the 1 and turned to 5. And then this guy probably thought he was doing good. It's just like, I literally am giving you everything that you gave me back to you. And Jesus, as he goes on to tell this story, he says, starting in verse 22, he said to him, I will condemn you with your own words, you wicked servant. Now you got to wonder what this guy's thinking. Whoa, like, you got to be thinking in this parable, like settle down. I will condemn you with your own words, you wicked servant. You knew that I was a severe man, taking what I did not deposit and reaping what I did not sow. Why then did you put my money in the bank, and at my coming I might have collected it with interest? And he said to those who stood by, take the mina from him and give it to the one who has the 10 minas. And then they said to him, Lord, basically he already has 10 minas. And he keeps going. Jesus keeps going. I tell you that to everyone who has, more will be given, but from the one who has not, even that will be taken away. But as for these enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them, bring them here and slaughter them before me. Now this story gets dark. Like, this story gets really dark. Like, this guy is basically like, I didn't do anything bad with this money. I didn't lose any money. I'm literally taking what you gave me and kind of hid it away, and I'm going to give it back to you. And Jesus was like, that is not what I said. I said, engage in business until I come. And this parable is telling a story of, hey, listen, in the time that we as believers, we as those that are followers of God, we as those that not only believe in him, but are connected to him through salvation, that as Christians, we are to engage in business. We are to do the work until he comes back. We are not just supposed to just sit on what we have. You notice that everybody was given an equal portion. And then there are different people that are able to do different things with that because of the circumstances of their life or what they're able to do and not able to do. But what we are supposed to do is engage in business until he returns. So he's telling this story, which again is interesting. Like, he's hung out with Zacchaeus. So many people didn't really understand the big picture of what was going on at this point. And then Jesus begins to tell the story, and people have got to be going like, why are you telling us this story? We're walking into Jerusalem. Why are you talking about all these people with these 3 months' wages? And why does it end so dark and so serious that we are to actually engage until you return? You've got to be wondering what the people that around him were going, what was happening with this story. There's no way that everybody that was there, and probably most, understood and saw the big picture of what was happening here. And then it goes into the triumphal entry. So now we're at Palm Sunday, and Jesus is coming in. And there's this point where he's coming in, and it starts out by saying, and when he had said these things, again, the parable that he had just shared, he went on ahead going up to Jerusalem. When he drew near to Bethpage and Bethany at the mount that is called Olivet, he sent 2 of his disciples, and he goes, listen, you need to go on into the village. I need you to get me a donkey. Okay. And if they ask you what is going on, just say the Lord has need of it. So basically, I'm not going to tell you too much of what is happening right now, but go get a donkey, and I need you to get it. And if anybody asks you what you do, just says that the Lord needs it. And so if you're those followers, if you're those disciples that are going, you got to be wondering, they're like, what? Like, why are we the 2 that has to go get the donkey? Like, I'd have been whining like I just got demoted to something. And when you get there, what was funny is that that probably someone actually was asking this question of, why are you untying this donkey? And then, you gotta hope that they just said to everybody, well, man, the Lord has need of it. So those who were sent away and found it just as he had told them, and as they were untying the colt, its owner said to them, why are you untying the colt? And they said, the Lord has need of it. And they brought it to Jesus, so apparently that works. So when Jesus tells you to do something, I guess you should just do it in the way that he tells you to do it. And they brought it to Jesus, and throwing their cloaks, their coats on it, they set Jesus on it. And as he rode along, they spread their cloaks on the road. And as he was drawing near, already on the way down the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of his disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice. Now, it wasn't just his disciples that were coming in. There were pilgrims that were coming with them. There were people from outside of Jerusalem that were coming in because of the week that was coming. Not necessarily knowing that his crucifixion was coming, because like we have the benefit of knowing that now. But they were coming in to be a part of the feast. They were coming in to be a part of Passover. And so Jesus gets into the city. And even the Pharisees are like, listen, they call him teacher. Will you please rebuke these people? Will you please tell them that this is not, what is going on doesn't need to be going on? And Jesus says, I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out. So Jesus is already kind of starting this verbal dialogue with these people, like, listen, I got this, okay? What they're doing is necessary. Now, as they are crying out and they are yelling and they are, coming in, you hear about like palm fronds being thrown down and coats being thrown down and all this stuff. And then saying, blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. You hear all these things about him coming in. But a lot of these people really thought that Jesus was like this warrior king, that when he came into the city, that it was about to get real. That it was about to get crazy, that finally we have this warrior king that is going to sit upon his throne and he's going to come and he is going to wreck shop. And so they didn't see the big picture. Many of them didn't see the big picture. Many of the disciples at this point probably didn't even see the big picture, because they thought one thing about what Jesus was doing and the way he was going to institute his kingdom, instead of understanding very soon that it was going to be very different than the way that they had thought. And then Jesus weeps over Jerusalem. In verses 41, it talks about that when he drew near and saw the city, he wept over it. It was like he knew that what was happening, he's like, as he looked at the city, like he was overcome with emotion for the people in that city. He was overcome with emotion because of the love that he had for that city, because of the love that he has for the people of God. And then you see that Jesus then cleanses the temple. And he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold, saying to them, it is written, my house shall be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers. Now, listen, however he did this, because was it like just he went like bull in a china shop and just went crazy? It's obvious that he cleansed the temple, that he sent it out. And this is different than the story of something that happened years earlier. But like he was not happy with what was happening in the temple. And so he just basically cleanses the temples, like this is not the way it's supposed to be. Now, if you're watching this, you have to wonder if people are watching him going, okay, now he hung out with a tax collector. He then tells this crazy story about engage in business until I come back. And then it ends really dark about slaughtering if we don't do what we're supposed to do. And then he comes in, he sends people for a donkey. He comes on in on the donkey. People are throwing stuff down. People are loving him. Most likely that crowd that was there were mostly pilgrims that had come with him, that were traveling into the city, that were hoping and desiring that Jesus was going to not only be this Messiah, but the Messiah that they thought was going to come in and be conquering. And then he weeps over Jerusalem. And then he goes in and he just wrecks shop into this temple. You got to be wondering, people looking at him and going, man, what is up with Jesus? Like, this doesn't seem like this is going the way that we thought. This is like his emotions seem to be all over the place. Like he's mad and angry and sad, and he's hanging out with people, and then he's telling these crazy stories. Like, you've got to be wondering if people are standing back just looking at him going, what is happening? See, they're not seeing the big picture. They have a perspective, kind of like that documentary that I said at the beginning. They're only seeing a little piece of it. And as history, and as time begins to unfold over the course of the next week, and then once he is in the tomb, and once he does die on the cross and is in the tomb and is resurrected, in the course of the next 40 days with those that saw him, things began to unfold. Where more and more you begin to see the big picture of what Jesus is doing. Jesus is declaring to those who are walking with him, and declaring with this story of Zacchaeus, that I have come to save that which was lost. And then as I continue to go, that, hey, listen, there's going to be this time in this story where the king that is supposed to take over is going to be away for a while, and make sure that all of you, these servants, that you engage in business until I come back. And there's a warning, there's a story there that we as the church, that we are to use the resources, we are to be who we were supposed to be, we are to engage in the business of Christ. And then he continues to go, and we see him coming into the city. And we see him sending out for a donkey, which is a very humble way of coming into the city. It's not this huge white horse. It's not this crazy parade. It's other people's coats. It's foliage off of trees and bushes and plants. And it's him coming in with everyone yelling and screaming in favor for him. And then he has this interaction with the Pharisees. And then he has this time where he weeps over the city. And he has this time then when he then cleanses the temple. And then that closes out Luke 19. And you look at everything that's going on there, you go, that is not really the Palm Sunday story. To me, it's the perfect Palm Sunday story, because so much of what happened at this point with everyone was they were not seeing the big picture of what Jesus was doing, of where Jesus was going, what Jesus was instituting. And as we, on this Sunday, look at that, I think we are not the people that cried out for Jesus as he was coming in. And, later on, there's, as the crucifixion gets closer, as you get out of Luke 19, there's a crowd that yelled for him to be crucified. And really there's the debate there. Was it the same crowd? I'm not really sure. It was mostly the same crowd. Like those that were during the triumphal entry probably were a lot of the pilgrims coming with him into the city, and those that were crying crucify him, probably some of those people had turned on him because the Pharisees were working really hard to get Jesus basically thrown under the bus. But a lot of them were probably people that were already in the city that were there, but there was probably some of this other group that had yelled for him coming into the city that were there yelling crucify at this time. And so the story keeps getting like crazy, where people are not seeing the big picture of what is really happening here. As he continues into the city, as the week continues, and he gets closer and closer to the cross, and he gets closer and closer to the crucifixion and everything that is going to happen on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you've got to wonder, as people are watching, if they're just going, man, the picture is getting bigger. Like the prophecies that we have heard, like the things that he has been saying, like the picture is getting bigger and bigger. And the things that I heard him say to Zacchaeus, and the things that I heard him say in this story, and the things that I heard him say to the disciples, the things that I witnessed with him weeping over to Jerusalem, and the things that he is doing to protect the temple, that it is so important of where this place that is important for connection to God, although that it's not the only place that it can happen, this place that is important for the connection of God, that I want to protect it to such a point that I want to make sure anything that's not supposed to be happening is not happening. And then Luke 19 closes. And then it goes into the rest of the story that leads toward salvation, that leads toward the cross. You've got the Lord's Supper. You've got what happens with his betrayal. You've got what happens in the garden. Then you have what happens on the cross. And next week, and over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at some of this and all that is happening during this time. But the challenge that I really want for you today is, when you look at this story, are there parts of it where maybe you have read the story of Zacchaeus, or the parable, or the triumphal entry, or him weeping over Jerusalem, or him getting the donkey, or him cleansing the temple, where we missed the big picture, where we missed the perspective, where we were just looking at a small box of black and white with hardly any sound and not seeing fully what was going on, where we maybe not fully seeing that in many ways maybe we are the Zacchaeus at one point in our life, and so excited that Jesus, on his way to change history, stopped for us. Or that we, as part of the church, that are we engaging in the business of what he has left us to do? Are we where are we with Jesus? Like, do we know the real Jesus of who he truly is as the King? Have we put our own perspective of who Jesus is supposed to be on him, like so many of them did, of this conquering, like, huge militaristic king? Or is it the true king that we know Jesus to be? Do we put on Jesus who we want him to be, or do we put on Jesus exactly who, not only Scripture, but exactly who we know him to be because of the connection that we have? Do we look at this situation, and do we respect and kind of understand and value Jesus literally crying over this city and the people that are in it? Do we value the anger and the cleansing and what he did to make sure that the temple was not what it was supposed to, what was not being something it was not supposed to be, that he was protecting the temple, that he was protecting even the people that were engaging in this temple by saying, "It is written, my house shall be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers." That the temple needed to be exactly who it was designed to be, that its identity had to be as a house of prayer, not as a house of anything else. And then it says that he was teaching daily in the temple, and then the chief priests and the scribes and the principal men of the people were seeking to destroy him, speaking against him, but they did not find anything they could do, for all the people were hanging on his words. And then it goes in to verse 20, and as we kind of start to see it, where his authority is challenged and the Pharisees are working against him, and like all that begins to happen. But on this Palm Sunday, what I would really challenge us to do is to look at where we are with Jesus, where we are with this story, what has happened in Luke 19. And have we missed any of the big picture of what we really should be seeing out of these scriptures? For me, especially is the parable of the minas, and where it's like, let's engage in business until I come. I've read that before and just been like, yeah, that makes sense. Don't waste what you have. But Jesus is literally in this story saying like, hey, listen, engage in what I have left you to do. Don't waste it. Don't just hand me back everything that I've given you. Like, engage in business and let's see what fruit comes forward. Like, it was almost like he knew that he was going to be frustrated that fruit was not coming out of the people of God. And as you sit with this story, knowing what is about to happen, I wonder, like, if there's a portion of the big picture that we need to be reminded of today on this Palm Sunday, of how Jesus is challenging us, of how he has changed our life, and in what ways he has changed our life, in what ways we've taken advantage of it. In what ways has Jesus, like when he sent those two to get the donkey, are we frustrated potentially, because I would have been, like, are we frustrated at a task that we've been giving? Are we frustrated by what Jesus has asked us to do? And all of this was leading to this incredible week that changed history. And so today, as we look at this Palm Sunday, my hope is that you will be challenged by something that you've read in Luke 19. Zacchaeus, the parable, the triumphal entry, the story of the donkey, him weeping over the city, and then the cleansing of the temple, knowing what is about to happen. So on this Palm Sunday, I pray that it will give you just time to evaluate your own story with Jesus and where you need to be reminded of where you need to engage in business, where you need to be reminded of the fact that he did come to seek and to save that which was lost, that you need to be reminded of the fact that when Jesus asked us to do something, we should do something and be able to share what he has told us to share. And that as we look toward Easter, and the way that we're going to do Easter, and the way that we're going to meet in homes, and we're going to focus on the Lord's Supper, I believe it's going to allow us to focus on a more intimate connection with God. And then as we look to on the 18th at our venue at the Record again in Bentonville, that we get a chance to actually have that time together where we experience the Lord's Supper together. So as you talk today, as you discuss these questions today, and as you discuss in the chat, I pray that the thing that you walk away with is understanding maybe even more the big picture, or maybe understanding where in places maybe you've kept the screen too small, you've kept the story too small, and God is beginning to expand to where you can see the bigger picture of not only what he was doing, because we have the benefit of looking back and seeing what he was doing now, but in our own lives now, seeing how God is expanding and you beginning to see the bigger picture.